The lecture hall was silent except for the hum of the air filtration system. The students sat in neat rows, their eyes fixed on the massive creature at the center of the amphitheater. Professor Kelkrin's voice echoed off the walls, crisp and deliberate. Eyes forward, appendages off the floor, and absolutely no sudden movements. That includes ossily gland flaring. Zernax. The professor paused, scanning the class, but his attention snapped back to the center of the room where the containment field pulsed with an eerie, transparent light. Inside the field stood the creature. It was an apex predator known only by its model designation, XR-42. At over 3 meters tall, it was a towering behemoth. 4 jaws layered over one another, snapping like a living nightmare. Its sleek body was wrapped in carbon-plated armor, giving it the look of a mobile fortress. Its tail flicked like a blade as it paced slowly inside its enclosure, a muscle-bound leviathan. "Behold the XR-42 Class 5 Apex Predator," Professor Kelkrin announced, his voice trembling slightly. "A bioengineered weapon designed for frontline combat, fast, reactive, and deadly, and today we are here to examine it up close." James Renner, a human exchange student from Earth, sat near the front, his legs sprawled wide like he owned the seat. He casually tore open a pouch of dehydrated bacon, the smell immediately wafting through the air, drawing a few nervous glances from the alien students around him. "Mr. James," the professor snapped, freezing the room in place, "kindly cease consuming flesh-scented consumables during a Predator module." James blinked and looked down at the bag in his hand. "Oh, sorry, just a snack," he muttered, tossing the pouch into his backpack. His presence in the lecture hall had already caused a few uneasy murmurs among the other species. His species, humans, had a reputation for unpredictability. And right now, with the XR-42 on full display, that reputation was only getting louder. The lights dimmed and the containment field flickered. The XR-42's growl echoed across the room, a seismic vibration, not just sound. The creature's muscles twitched, its sharp senses hunting in on the class. Professor Kelkrin's voice faltered slightly. "Observe the pressure-sensitive scutes along the thoracic curve. They react to even the slightest stimulus." The class leaned forward, their various species on edge, observing the apex predator as it stared out from within the containment field. Suddenly, there was a faint, almost imperceptible shift in the air. The lights flickered once, then twice. Then the containment field sputtered. "Control, respond." Professor Kelkrin's voice was tense. "I'm registering." The field crackled violently, and then silence. The XR-42 stepped forward, slow and deliberate. Its eyes locked onto the students, its jaws clicking. Its massive claws scraped the floor, producing an unnerving screech. It was no longer contained. The predator was free. Screams erupted from the students, several scrambling in panic. One jumped 2 rows in a single bound, his legs propelled by pure instinct. Another tried to climb the wall but failed, slipping and crashing into the seats below. James didn't move. He simply watched, his hands slipping into his backpack, his fingers brushing the familiar pouch of bacon. The predator's eyes narrowed, its focus shifting. "James," Professor Kelkrin called, his voice straining as he desperately tried to lock down the containment. "For the love of all the galaxies." James stood up slowly. His hand rose toward the predator, a calmness about him that made the room freeze in place. "Easy, big guy," James muttered softly, as if addressing a domesticated dog. "You got out early, huh?" The creature paused, its massive nostrils flaring, sniffing the air. Then, with slow precision, it took a step forward, its lower mandibles clicking with terrifying speed. James didn't flinch. He reached into his backpack, pulled out the small packet of bacon, and held it out toward the creature. The room fell into stunned silence. "You smell that?" James whispered, his voice smooth and even. The XR-42 took a step closer, its massive body tensing with primal instinct. But it didn't lunge. It sniffed James's outstretched hand, its enormous nostrils expanding and contracting. And then it lowered its head slowly, cautiously, its jaws parting only slightly. The tension in the room was palpable. The rest of the students and faculty were too afraid to move. "James, what are you doing?" Professor Kelkrin hissed, his voice a mere whisper now, full of panic. "You're not trained for this." But James didn't answer. Instead, he smiled softly and reached out, offering the bacon-scented snack. The apex predator let out a low, guttural noise, something that wasn't quite a growl but a vibration of sorts. Then, to the shock of everyone present, The predator took a slow, hesitant step forward and allowed James to rub its massive head. The room went utterly still. James continued to stroke the creature's head, his voice barely a murmur. "Yeah, who's a good boy? You are. Yes, you are." The room was silent, but the tension remained thick, the weight of this bizarre moment hanging over everyone. James, the human, had calmed the apex predator. The creature's massive body seemed to relax. It let out a soft, strange, purring sound, a sound no one had ever heard from a creature engineered to kill. Then the doors burst open. Security officers rushed in, weapons drawn, but upon seeing the scene unfolding before them, they froze. James looked up from the creature's side, its massive body now lying placidly next to him. "Could you not shout?" he muttered. The lead officer, his weapon still raised, hesitated. His eyes shifted between James and the now docile XR-42. The professor stood against the wall, panting heavily. "I think I'm experiencing cardiac compression," he whispered. The creature shifted slightly, its massive claws scraping the floor as it growled, not at James, but at the officers. All 7 security guards froze in place. The moment felt frozen in time. James stood slowly. "I think you all should leave," he said, walking past the stunned officers. "He doesn't like yelling." As the officers filed out in complete silence, James turned to the rest of the class. "Anyone got a camera?" he asked casually, before picking up his backpack and striding toward the door. The students, still paralyzed in shock, exchanged glances. One of them whispered, "Did he just pet it?" "Yeah, I guess," another muttered. It's like he tamed it." As James stepped outside the lecture hall, he realized he was already in trouble. And yet, despite everything, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pride. This wasn't just about saving his own skin, it was about something deeper, something he hadn't quite figured out yet. In the distance, Monica Greer, an Earth Council liaison for intergalactic educational integration, waited for him by the corridor. Her expression was one of exasperation and apprehension. "James," she said, her voice soft but firm, "we need to talk." James raised an eyebrow. "About what? I just pet an apex predator. You want me to start a circus act?" Monica sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Let's just say the Galactic Council is deeply concerned." James blinked. "Why? Because I rubbed the biggest predator in the galaxy's belly." Monica hesitated, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You've done more than that, you've just—" She paused. "You've made history, James." Monica's voice was heavy with the weight of unspoken consequences as they walked down the sterile, metallic corridor of Gamma Academy. The buzz of overhead lights and the hum of mechanical systems were the only sounds filling the tense space between them. "You don't seem to understand the gravity of what just happened," Monica said, her footsteps clicking sharply on the floor as she quickened her pace to match James's stride. James, hands stuffed in the pockets of his Academy-issued jacket, simply shrugged. "I pet the thing. It's not like I tamed it. It was just a simple interaction." "A simple interaction?" Monica's voice betrayed her disbelief. She slowed her pace, turning to face him. "You've just done what no one else has managed to do, calm an apex predator engineered to dismantle entire battalions, and you did it with bacon." James raised an eyebrow. "Look, it was a calm approach. I didn't panic. You don't panic when something that big's sniffing you." Monica pinched the bridge of her nose, clearly frustrated. "It's not about you not panicking. It's what this means for humanity." James scoffed, leaning against the wall. "What, you think this is some kind of galactic weapon thing? It's just a behavioral anomaly. I didn't make the thing purr, it just happened." Monica stared at him, her expression shifting from frustration to something else, something more calculated. "You're not getting it. You've just shown the galaxy that Earth possesses something no one expected, emotional resonance with beasts like that. Do you understand what kind of chaos that can cause?" James's gaze softened, his arms folding across his chest. "So what, you're saying the entire galaxy's gonna freak out over a belly rub?" Monica looked him dead in the eye. Yes, they are." The sound of an intercom crackling cut through the conversation. "Monica Greer, please report to Council Chamber A. Monica Greer, please report to Council Chamber A." Monica didn't flinch at the call. Instead, her expression hardened. "This isn't over, James. We're about to have a very serious conversation with some very powerful people." "Great," James muttered, pushing himself off the wall. More lectures about how I shouldn't pet death beasts. Monica's lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't respond as they continued down the hallway, the metal doors of the council chamber looming ahead. The council chamber was a large, circular room lined with holographic screens displaying various species, flags and insignias, each representative seated in high-backed chairs arranged in a wide, concentric ring. James entered the room with Monica, and immediately all eyes were on him. Every species present wore the same expression, stunned, intrigued, and wary. At the far end of the room, the head of the council, a towering figure from the yen species, raised a single elongated arm. The room fell silent. James Renner, the yen delegate's voice boomed, you are responsible for an incident that has reverberated across intergalactic communications. Your behavior with the XR-42 predator has been analyzed by multiple species ethics boards. It's been deemed unprecedented. Unprecedented, James muttered under his breath, glancing at Monica. She nodded solemnly. The yen delegate continued. We require an immediate explanation. You are a human, a species known for its aggression, not empathy. Yet we are forced to confront the undeniable. XR-42 submitted to you. You did not fight, did not flee, and more importantly, you did not panic. James's shoulders sagged slightly, the weight of the room bearing down on him. Look, I didn't mean to do anything special. I just didn't freak out. You don't freak out when you've got a 4-ton predator eyeing you. The yen delegate's eyes narrowed, his gaze intense. Is that how humans do it? Through calmness? That we can accept. What we cannot accept is the overwhelming possibility that your species could be weaponizing empathy. The room hummed with whispers, and several delegates shifted uneasily in their seats. Monica stepped forward, taking a position next to James. We've examined this behavior, and I assure you this wasn't manipulation. This was instinct, empathy. What James did wasn't a strategy, it was a response, human nature responding to a creature in distress. A sharp voice from the back of the room cut through the tension. You're telling us that this human's emotional response to pet a creature designed to annihilate civilizations is just instinct. Yes, Monica replied, her voice firm. Yes, and that instinct is what makes humans different. James shifted uncomfortably. The last few days had been nothing short of a whirlwind. From the chaos of the Predator's escape to now standing in front of the Galactic Council, he couldn't help but feel out of his depth. He'd only done what felt natural, and now he was being scrutinized like some kind of science experiment. Another delegate, a short and spindly figure from the Ori species, leaned forward. What's worse, the creature responded. We've never seen a Class 5 predator behave like this. Ever. It's as though it was calmed by this human's pheromones, by his voice. What does this mean for us? If humanity has found a way to emotionally manipulate apex predators, then what else could they do? A murmur rose from the chamber. Monica held up a hand, her voice cutting through the rising tension. Humanity didn't manipulate anyone. You're all overthinking it. This is not a weapon. It's a symbiotic relationship between human empathy and alien creatures that no one else has considered before. Don't turn this into something dangerous when it is. Symbiotic, the yen delegate scoffed. You're suggesting your species will just casually tame the galaxy's deadliest beasts with your bacon-scented lotions. I don't know about bacon-scented lotions, James interjected, his voice laced with sarcasm. But if you want to make this an intergalactic petting zoo, then sure, we're ready. The room grew quieter, the delegates exchanging uneasy glances. Finally, the yen delegate spoke again, his tone softening slightly. This is a matter that requires deeper investigation. We will take action, but... He trailed off, and a different delegate, a muscular alien from the Kithra species, leaned in. We propose a temporary solution. James Renner, we are designating you as a liaison to handle this anomaly. Your ability to calm apex predators is now a matter of galactic concern. You will assist in future studies. Your actions will be closely monitored. James blinked. Wait, you want me to, what, pet more of these things? Monica shot him a warning look but stepped forward, nodding. Yes, James. You'll be instrumental in assisting with interspecies interactions. You'll observe new apex predator containment protocols and help facilitate peaceful cohabitation between species. James's jaw dropped. You've got to be kidding me. The room buzzed with agreement, and the yen delegate's eyes softened, almost in apology. Humanity's ability to bond emotionally with creatures previously deemed untamable could be the key to intergalactic peace. or it could prove dangerous if misused. This is why we need you. We need to understand how. James exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. You want me to be your petting expert? I thought I came here to study. Monica gave him a small, sympathetic smile. It seems like you've got a bit more responsibility now. James wasn't sure how he ended up in this mess. 1 minute, he was an ordinary exchange student from Earth, hopping to learn about alien biology. The next, he was a galactic sensation, the first human ever to calm an apex predator with nothing more than empathy and bacon-scented lotion. His head throbbed as he made his way down the narrow hall toward his new assignment. He was assigned to a private chamber, a small room adorned with reinforced glass panels and sensors designed to monitor any aggression from the creatures inside. A sign on the door read, XR-42, Observation and Handler Training. Handler training? James thought bitterly. The word handler made it sound like he was someone's personal pet sitter. As he walked inside, the room was quiet, save for the low hum of the containment field and the steady beep of monitoring devices. There, packing slowly at the far end of the enclosure, was XR-42, his apex predator, the one he had once rubbed like a domesticated dog. The creature's massive form loomed like a walking fortress. Its armored plating reflected the sterile lights overhead, and its 4 jaws were slightly open, showing a glimpse of razor-sharp teeth. Monica entered behind him, her expression neutral. It's time, James. You need to work with it again. We've got a whole team coming in to observe today. If this works, we might be able to formulate an official interspecies peace protocol. James snorted, and if it does, then we'll be dealing with a diplomatic disaster. Monica crossed her arms. It's not just about the predator. It's about what this means for human potential across the galaxy. You might have just stumbled upon something no one else ever thought possible. I didn't stumble onto anything, James muttered, running a hand through his hair. I just didn't panic. The creature stopped packing and stared at him, its dark eyes gleaming like an abyss. James stepped forward cautiously, his heart pounding, but there was no turning back now. He was the human who had tamed it once, or at least calmed it. XR-42's nostrils flared as it sniffed the air. The low rumble in its chest was a sign of curiosity. James took another step closer. Hey, big guy, he said, his voice steady. It's me again, remember me. There was no sign of aggression, no sharp growl, no lunging attack. Just the heavy, measured steps of the predator as it crept closer, its eyes locked onto James with what could almost be described as recognition. He reached for the pouch in his pocket, pulling out a small vial of bacon-scented lotion. The same lotion that had calmed XR-42 during their first encounter. James hesitated for a moment before squeezing the lotion onto his hand. Here goes nothing, he muttered. He slowly extended his hand toward the creature, just as he had done the first time, making sure not to make any sudden movements. The predator sniffed the air once more, its massive head tilting slightly. Then unexpectedly, XR-42 moved forward, lowering its head to James's outstretched hand. James felt a wave of tension surge through his chest as the creature's cold, jagged scales brushed against his fingers. For a second, it felt like time stood still. The predator's huge body loomed, but James didn't move. He didn't even breathe. With slow, deliberate movements, he began to rub the creature's armored head, just as he had done before. It took a moment for the predator to respond, but then, to everyone's surprise, it lowered itself onto its side, its massive belly exposed. The room was silent. Monica, standing behind the glass, watched in awe, her eyes wide. The team of researchers in the observation room murmured to one another in shock. He's doing it again, one of the researchers whispered. This is beyond anything we've seen. James continued rubbing the predator's belly, the sensation both surreal and comforting. He could feel the tension in XR-42's massive frame begin to ease, the creature's body settling, its sharp breaths becoming more rhythmic. I can't believe this is happening, Monica said, her voice thick with disbelief. We've never seen this before, never. James didn't respond, too focused on the task at hand. He had become something of a strange expert in predator psychology without ever intending to. The weight of what he was doing began to hit him. He was no longer just an exchange student. He was something else now, something far beyond what he had ever expected. After several long moments, the creature's low growl turned into something more akin to a purr. A sound that, while deep and unsettling for some, felt oddly calming to James. The apex predator who could tear through fleets of ships was now lying down like a domesticated animal. Then a voice crackled through his earpiece. It was the Yen delegate from earlier, his tone sharp. "James, do not get too comfortable. This is not over. We need to discuss what this means for humanity and its position within the galaxy. Your actions are unprecedented, and they may be interpreted as a potential weapon. Understand this, we cannot allow Earth to hold this power unchecked." James's hand froze for a moment. The reality of the situation hit him. What he had done was more than just a petting session with a predator. It was something dangerous, something the galaxy didn't know how to handle. "I'm not a weapon," James muttered, almost to himself. He rubbed the creature's belly a little harder, trying to steady his racing thoughts. "I just don't panic." Monica's voice came through the earpiece, a bit more supportive now. "I know, but others may see it differently. We need to figure out what this means for us, for Earth. This could change everything." The creature beneath him let out another satisfied rumble, its massive claws flexing in pleasure. It seemed to be as comfortable as a giant predator could get. James stepped back, wiping his hand on his jacket. "Maybe we don't need to figure everything out right now," he said quietly. "Maybe we just need to survive today." The door to the observation room opened, and several scientists and researchers filed in, looking excited yet cautious. They witnessed this entire interaction from behind reinforced glass, but it was clear they didn't know how to process what had just happened. One of the senior researchers, a tall, bipedal alien with translucent skin, stepped forward. "This is beyond our initial understanding," the researcher said. "The behavioral data we've collected is extraordinary. We need to conduct further studies immediately." James nodded, trying not to let his exhaustion show. "Sure, go ahead. Just don't expect me to start a petting zoo with every predator in the galaxy." The researcher smiled, though it was a nervous smile. "We'll need your assistance for more tests. You seem to have a unique influence on these creatures, Mr. Renner." "I'll do my part," James said, turning to leave the room. "But don't expect me to save the galaxy with belly rubs. I've got enough weird stuff on my plate." Monica followed him as they exited the chamber. She didn't speak for a moment, but when she did, her voice was softer, almost resigned. "You might have just become Earth's most important asset in this galaxy. That's a lot to carry." James glanced at her, a bitter smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Yeah, well, no one ever told me I was signing up for this." Monica's expression softened as she looked at him. "I think you'll be all right, James. Just remember, sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the galaxy is the ability to stay calm when everything else is falling apart." James didn't respond, but as they walked down the sterile hallway toward the next chapter of his bizarre new life, he couldn't help but wonder if Monica was right. Was he truly a weapon, or had he just found a way to survive? Only time would tell. The days blurred into one another, each one marked by a new round of tests, observations, and endless debates about the implications of James's actions. He had become an unwilling celebrity in the academic world, a subject of fascination and fear, a symbol of humanity's potential, both revered and feared by alien species in ways he never imagined. His days were filled with endless meetings, often standing in front of glass windows, under the watchful eyes of various alien races. XR-42 was his constant companion, or rather, the creature he had come to manage. And while James hadn't become exactly fond of the beast, he had come to understand it in ways no one else had. The predator was unpredictable, sure, but it responded to James in ways that baffled everyone else. Its aggression was muted. Its instincts seemed to calm whenever James was around. At least most of the time. James stood by the reinforced glass wall of the observation room, arms crossed. XR-42 paced in its enclosure, muscles rippling beneath the smooth, dark plating. It was a beautiful creature, but it was also a weapon, a reminder that in the galaxy, even beauty could be deadly. "So what's next?" James asked, his voice laced with exhaustion. Monica had arranged another meeting with the council, but this time it wasn't just about what had happened. It was about how humanity would move forward from here. Monica sighed, checking her datapad before looking up at James. "The council is convening again tomorrow. They want to know if humanity can handle the responsibility of controlling this kind of influence over apex predators. If they can't trust you, trust us. Then we risk a full embargo on our species." They might even demand that you stop interacting with these creatures entirely. James frowned. What, you mean I'd be grounded from petting death machines? She offered him a small, tired smile. It's not about petting them. It's about understanding the consequences. Right now, we're under the microscope. If the galaxy sees this as a new weapon, one that can soothe and neutralize even the deadliest predators, it could change everything. They might view us as a threat. James turned back to look at XR-42, its claws clicking as it walked in tight circles. The creature was still, for now, calm, but the tension in the room was palpable. I didn't sign up for this, James muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. I came here to learn to study, not to be a peacekeeper for giant monsters. I know, Monica said softly, but you've been thrust into something bigger than any of us imagined, and now we need you more than ever. The universe is watching. The next day, James found himself once again in the council chamber, this time joined by several high-ranking officials from various species. The room was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Alien delegates murmured to each other as James and Monica stepped into the circle of light. James Renner, the Yen delegate began, his tone neutral but heavy with authority. You have caused a significant disturbance across our galactic systems. Your ability to influence apex predators has led to a crisis in intergalactic diplomacy. Some are calling this unprecedented. Others are calling it dangerous. James stood straight, trying to ignore the knots in his stomach. I didn't ask for any of this. I just reacted when the creature... Don't misunderstand, the Yen delegate interrupted, his voice cold. You have shown an ability that none of us thought possible, but the real question is whether humanity can be trusted with such a gift, or whether it is, in fact, a dangerous power, a power that could destabilize the galaxy. James opened his mouth to respond, but Monica placed a hand on his arm, signaling him to hold back. She stepped forward. Humanity did not seek to manipulate anything, she said firmly, addressing the room. What James did wasn't calculated. It was instinct, an emotional connection, if you will. He calmed the creature in a way no one else could, and that, I believe, shows that humanity's role in this galaxy isn't one of brute force, but of understanding, of compassion. Several delegates looked at each other skeptically, while others murmured in approval. But the tension in the room was palpable. The debate was far from over. James took a deep breath, stepping forward. If you want to know what humanity is capable of, he said, his voice steady, then stop thinking of us as just a violent species. We've got the ability to change things, to build bridges, not just break them. You want to call it a weapon? Fine, but it's not about control, it's about trust. For a moment the room fell silent. The alien delegates exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Then a delegate from the Kithra species, an insectoid creature with translucent wings, spoke up. This ability to calm the apex predator, what does it mean for our defense systems? Can you control this influence? Is it universal? James took a slow breath. He had no easy answers. I can't control it. It's not like flipping a switch. It's a reaction, a response, and it's not something I can predict. Monica stepped in quickly. But that's the point. This isn't a weapon of control. It's a method of de-escalation. Humans have the ability to assess a situation and act instinctively without violence. James showed us that without ever having been trained in this kind of interaction. The room was still for a long moment. Then the Kithra delegate spoke again. If this is indeed an ability, then we must ask, is humanity prepared to use it wisely? James nodded slowly. We've already made mistakes in the past, but this isn't a mistake. We didn't come here to conquer or dominate. We came here to understand. And maybe this is the chance for us to prove that we can be trusted. Another voice, this one from a soft-spoken Authari, cut through the tension. Perhaps we need more tests, more observations, but we can't let fear dictate our decisions. Let's test the boundaries of this influence and determine whether it poses a real threat to the galaxy's stability. The Yen delegate raised an arm, silencing the murmurs. Agreed, but be warned, this is not a simple matter. We will be conducting further studies on your influence over apex predators. If this proves to be an uncontrollable force, humanity may face consequences. James felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. There was no going back now. Understood, James said quietly, meeting the eyes of each delegate. I'll do whatever it takes to prove we're not a threat, but I'm not going to be the one who's used as a pawn in some political game. You want to know if humanity can be trusted? Watch us. The meeting adjourned, and James felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. As he stepped out of the council chamber, Monica was waiting for him. "You did well," she said, her tone warm but tinged with concern. "But it's not over yet." James rubbed his temple, his nerves still on edge. "It feels like it's just beginning, and I don't know if I'm ready for whatever comes next." Monica gave him a sympathetic smile. "None of us are, but you're the one who has to make the case for humanity, not just for Earth, but for us all." James nodded. For the first time, he realized the true scope of the responsibility he now carried. This wasn't just about surviving. It was about changing how the galaxy viewed his species, and that would be a far more difficult task than anything he'd faced before. James sat in his quarters, staring at the small window that looked out over the bioluminescent cityscape of Gamma Academy. The stars outside twinkled like distant promises, uncertain, unreachable. His reflection stared back at him in the glass, his face tired, worn by the weight of everything that had happened. The past few days had been a blur, council meetings, endless debates, and a heavy sense of impending doom that clung to the air. Every glance from the alien species felt like scrutiny. Every whisper from the corridors, a reminder that humanity's place in the galaxy hung in the balance. The door chimed, and Monica's voice came through the intercom. "James, you have a visitor." A visitor? He didn't even try to hide his surprise. It had been days since anyone had come by, other than the official delegates and researchers. "Yeah, you might want to prepare yourself," she said, and the tone of her voice was just enough to set his nerves on edge. James stood up and walked to the door, opening it to find a tall, humanoid figure standing in the doorway. It was one of the Kithra, an insectoid species known for their translucent wings and sharp exoskeletons. The Kithra delegate, who had spoken so boldly in the council meeting, was now standing in front of him, her face unreadable. "James Renner," she said, her voice soft but firm. "We need to talk." James raised an eyebrow, stepping back to let her enter. "About what?" The Kithra stepped inside, her wings humming slightly as she moved. "The recent council meeting and your gift." She glanced around the room, clearly uncomfortable in the small, human-sized space. "It's more complicated than you realize." James crossed his arms. "Complicated? You mean you've got more issues with me petting giant monsters?" The Kithra didn't smile, but her antennae flicked slightly, indicating a shift in her stance. "You misunderstand. This is not about your actions per se. It's about the consequences of those actions. The council is divided. Some believe that you represent a new dawn for interspecies relations, a way to bridge gaps we never thought possible. Others see you as a threat, an uncontrollable force that could unravel the very fabric of galactic order." James's jaw tightened. "And which side are you on?" "I'm here as a mediator," the Kithra replied, her gaze steady. "But I am not blind to the implications. You're a symbol now, a symbol of something greater than yourself, humanity. Empathy, as you call it, could either lead to peace or destruction, and it's not just about you, it's about Earth's place in the galaxy. We need to understand your species' true nature, and we need to make sure it's not a danger." "Right," James looked down at his feet, trying to steady his racing thoughts. "So what? You want me to perform some kind of galactic therapy session for all the apex predators now?" "No," the Kithra's tone was serious, almost urgent. "But we need to see if your influence can be controlled. If humanity is to be entrusted with this ability, it cannot be left unchecked. We have already begun studies, and there are those who wish to test you, to push you further than you've gone before." James shook his head. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't want any of this." "You might not have wanted it," the Kithra said, "but now it's your responsibility, and you will be tested. If you fail, the consequences will not be limited to just you." Her words hit him like a physical blow. James swallowed hard, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "What does that mean?" "The galaxy is already looking for any sign of weakness in humanity. If they see that this influence over predators, this power is unstable, it could be the justification needed to exile Earth from the Council, to isolate your planet." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "And we all know what happens when a species is cast out." James turned away from her, walking to the small desk by the window. His mind was reeling. The idea of Earth being isolated was terrifying. It wasn't just about him anymore. The entire fate of his species could be in the hands of the next predator interaction, the next test. "I'll do it," he said, his voice quiet, almost to himself. "Whatever it takes." The Kithra's antennae flicked, and she nodded. Good. Then we begin tomorrow. Prepare yourself. The following morning, James stood in the observation chamber once more. This time, the room was filled with more than just researchers. A group of high-ranking delegates had gathered, some from species that had shown open skepticism during the last meeting, others who were more curious. The air was thick with anticipation, and James could feel the weight of their eyes on him as he stood near the observation glass, watching as the containment field powered up. Behind him, Monica stood silently, her presence a quiet support. "You ready?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. James didn't respond immediately. He was too focused on the task ahead. He was about to face XR-42 again, but this time with the full weight of the galaxy watching him. He was being tested, not just for his ability to calm the Predator, but for humanity's capacity to control a force that was as unpredictable as it was powerful. A few moments later, the XR-42 emerged from the containment area. The field shimmered as it flickered off, revealing the massive creature. It walked slowly, cautiously, its claws clicking against the reinforced flooring. The Predator's eyes narrowed as it spotted James, and for a brief moment the tension in the air became palpable. It was as though the creature remembered him, but was unsure whether it should trust him again. James took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Easy, big guy," he said, his voice low and calm. "Remember me." The Predator paused, its nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air. Then, with a hesitant step, it moved closer. The room fell into complete silence. James reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the familiar vial of bacon-scented lotion. As soon as the Predator caught the scent, its pace slowed, and it took another step forward, sniffing the air once again. James didn't move. He let the creature come to him. The air seemed to crackle with tension as XR-42 lowered its head, its massive form towering over James. The entire room was still, eyes fixed on the human and the Predator. Then slowly, almost tentatively, the creature's head lowered, and James reached up to gently rub the creature's thick neck, just as he had done before. A soft growl rumbled from deep within XR-42's chest. It was the sound of relaxation, of submission, not out of fear but out of trust. The Predator was calm, its aggressive instincts muted for now. James glanced up at the delegates behind the glass. They were watching in stunned silence, and for the first time, the weight of his actions hit him. This wasn't just about one human and one Predator. This was about proving that humanity could be trusted with something far beyond its reach. "Good boy," James whispered. The creature's massive body shifted slightly, and it let out a soft, purr-like noise. The room remained quiet, the tension palpable. Monica leaned in close to James, her voice barely above a whisper. "You did it again." He nodded, his eyes still locked on the creature. "We're not just here to survive, Monica. We're here to show the galaxy that we can change things." The following days passed in a haze of observation, analysis, and more tests. The once curious researchers were now treating James like some sort of living experiment, his every move scrutinized, his interactions with XR-42 recorded and analyzed from every angle. It was strange. A few days ago, he had been just another student at Gamma Academy, excited to learn and study. Now he was a symbol. And that symbol was something that terrified and fascinated everyone he came into contact with. James sat alone in his quarters late one evening, the soft hum of the building's ventilation system the only sound. The windows were cracked open slightly, letting in a faint breeze from the biosphere dome, where the luminous trees and floating platforms swayed in the gentle night air. He didn't want to think about the politics of what he had done, didn't want to think about the pressure mounting with each new test. But it was hard not to. Every corner of the academy felt like it was watching him. Every student he passed, every delegate he encountered seemed to be sizing him up. It wasn't just the apex predators anymore. It was his whole species. Humanity's future was hanging in the balance, and it felt like it was all on his shoulders. A sudden chime broke the silence, and the door to his quarters slid open. Monica entered, her usual calm demeanor replaced by something else, something more urgent. "James, we've got a problem," she said, her voice low and serious. James stood up immediately, his heart racing. "What's going on?" "It's XR-42, Monica began, walking over to him. "There's been an anomaly in its behavior. We're seeing signs of aggression that we haven't seen before. It's responding differently to you." James's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" Monica handed him a data pad, and as James looked at the display, his stomach sank. The predator, once calm and docile under his influence, had begun to show signs of agitation. Its behavior was shifting. It was no longer following the pattern that had been established in the previous sessions. Instead, it was becoming more unpredictable. Its aggression was escalating, and the researchers had no explanation for it. "It's almost like it's testing us," Monica continued. "Like it's pushing back, and the worst part is we're seeing a pattern. It's reacting to your pheromones, but not in the way we expected." James's mind raced. "So it's my fault." "No," Monica said quickly. "It's not your fault, but we need to understand why this is happening. If it escalates, we're looking at a breach in containment. And if that happens, the Council's patience with humanity will snap. It's already on the edge." James swallowed hard, the weight of the situation pressing down on him like never before. "I don't know what's going on. I didn't change anything. I've been doing the same thing." "I know," Monica said, stepping closer. "But whatever this is, it's bigger than just calming a creature. It's about the unknown. The connection you have with the predator, the emotional resonance. It's unpredictable, and right now, it's working against us." A loud crash echoed through the walls of the academy, followed by a deep, guttural growl. James's heart skipped a beat. "That's coming from the containment chamber," Monica said, already moving toward the door. "Come on, we need to get to XR42 now." James didn't need any more prompting. He followed Monica through the corridors, his mind racing. This wasn't just about his connection to the predator anymore. It was about keeping control of something far more dangerous. The containment chamber was a flurry of activity when they arrived. Security teams rushed back and forth, their weapons drawn but hesitant. The creature's growls were deep, vibrating the walls of the chamber. The field that had once held XR42 in check was flickering wildly, unstable. Through the reinforced glass, James could see the predator packing, its massive claws scraping against the floor, its jaws snapping. The creature's eyes were wide, wild, dangerous. It was no longer the calm being he had known. It was on the attack. The head of security, a tall alien from the Zelani species, rushed up to them. "We need you to calm it down," he said urgently, his voice filled with panic. "The field is failing. We can't contain it much longer." James stared through the glass at the XR42, the creature's primal instincts fully unleashed. "I can't. I don't understand what's happening." Monica grabbed his arm, her expression serious. "You have to try. You're the only one who can reach it. You've done it before. If we lose this predator, if it escapes—" "I know," James interrupted, his voice shaky. "But it's different now. Something's wrong. It's like it doesn't trust me anymore." The predator let out a deafening roar, slamming its tail into the containment wall. The shockwave rattled the glass, and James could feel the vibration through his bones. "This isn't just an emotional response," he said quietly, almost to himself. "It's a test." Monica looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "I think it's trying to see how far I'll go," James murmured, his eyes locked on the creature. "I've been petting it, calming it, but I didn't understand what that might do. It's not just calming a predator, it's putting it in a position where it has to submit to me. It's not trusting me, it's seeing if I'm going to break under the pressure." Monica took a deep breath, her face hardening with determination. "Then don't break. Show it you're in control. If you lose control now, we lose everything." James nodded, a sense of purpose settling over him. This wasn't about calming a beast. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity could hold its ground, that they could control their own instincts, even when everything was pushing against them. Without another word, he walked up to the glass, his heart pounding. The moment the XR42 locked eyes with him, everything else in the room faded away. James wasn't going to just react anymore. He wasn't going to let his instincts control him. This time, he would be the one to control the situation. "Easy, big guy," he said, his voice steady, low, commanding. "I'm not afraid of you." For a moment, the predator paused, its eyes narrowing. It sniffed the air, its muscles taut, ready to spring at any moment. James extended his hand, his palm facing the creature. He could feel the pressure building in the room, the weight of the moment, the expectations of everyone watching. "Come on," he murmured. "I know you're not just a monster, you're more than that. I'm not here to hurt you." The predator's growls slowly softened as it took a tentative step forward. Its body quivered, and for a moment James thought it might attack. But then it stopped, just a few feet away, its massive chest rising and falling with deep, controlled breaths. Good, James whispered, lowering his hand slightly. That's it, you don't have to fight, I'm not going anywhere. The room held its breath as the XR-42 hesitated, the seconds stretching out like hours. Then slowly the creature lowered its head, a sign of submission. It was not complete submission, but it was enough. The room exhaled, the tension easing just enough to feel like a victory. James stepped back, eyes never leaving the creature. "It's okay," he said quietly. "You're safe." The next few hours were a blur of activity, but James barely noticed. His mind was still reeling from the sheer force of the encounter with XR-42. What had just happened? The predator had been so close to breaking free, to unleashing its full fury. Yet somehow, in the face of all that danger, James had held it together. But he didn't know how much longer he could keep doing this, playing the part of humanity's symbol of peace. The creature was calm for now, but how long would it last? Monica found him alone in his quarters later that night, his eyes tired, his face drawn with exhaustion. He was staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the unease that had settled into his bones. He couldn't forget the look in XR-42's eyes, the way it had tested him. Monica knocked softly before stepping inside, her expression serious. "How are you holding up?" James didn't respond immediately. He was still too caught in his thoughts. Finally, he let out a long breath. "I'm not sure I can keep this up. I can't calm it forever. I can't control it." "You're not controlling it," Monica said, sitting down beside him. "You're establishing trust, that's the difference." James shook his head. "It's more than that. It feels like I'm walking a tightrope. If I slip, everything falls apart." Monica studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke in a quiet voice. "James, you've done something no one thought was possible, but I need you to listen to me now. The Council. They're watching everything, and they're getting nervous. They want proof. Proof that humanity can handle this connection with apex predators. Proof that Earth isn't just a wildcard species." James sat up, his hands gripping the edge of the bed. "Proof? What kind of proof? That I can pet more deadly creatures?" "No," Monica said, her eyes intense. "They want to see if you can influence more than just one predator. They want to test if this ability is something universal. They want you to perform with other species, with different kinds of apex predators. If you can do it, they'll consider it a positive step for humanity. If not, things could spiral out of control." James stared at her, disbelief written on his face. "You're asking me to perform like some kind of circus act?" "No," Monica replied firmly. "I'm asking you to prove that humanity is more than just capable of survival. You've done it with XR-42, but the stakes are higher now. You need to show that what you did wasn't just a fluke." He leaned back, staring at the ceiling again. His mind was racing. Was he the right person to carry this weight? Could he control these creatures, or would he fail? Monica's voice broke through his thoughts. "James, I don't think anyone else could do it. That's why we need you." James exhaled slowly, a heavy weight pressing on his chest. "What happens if I fail?" Monica hesitated, then looked him straight in the eyes. "We risk being labeled a threat. If humanity can't show its value in this galaxy, we might be isolated. Worse, we might be seen as a danger to the other species. The Council won't hesitate to act if they feel we're too unpredictable." For a moment, James could only process the gravity of her words. He'd been told before that the stakes were high, but hearing it so plainly, from someone he trusted, made it hit home like never before. "We can't let that happen," Monica added, her voice softer now but still filled with conviction. "You're not alone in this, but you have to act, not just for Earth but for every species that's depending on you." James nodded, his mind still spinning, but something inside him clicked. He was the one who had started this, and now he was the only one who could finish it. The next morning, the team gathered again in the containment chamber. The atmosphere was charged with tension as James stood at the edge of the glass wall, preparing for his next test. A different apex predator had been brought in, an aggressive, scaled creature with reptilian eyes that seemed to burn with an unrelenting desire for control. This one was known as the axoloth. Its species was infamous for its ability to track and kill prey in mere seconds. As the containment field powered down, James took a deep breath. The axoloth prowled inside the chamber, its long, sinewy body twisting as it circled, assessing its new environment. Its eyes locked onto James immediately, its pupils narrowing. "Here we go," Monica whispered from the control room. She had stayed close, watching James's every move. James swallowed, his heart thudding in his chest. There was no room for error. The last thing he wanted was for this beast to break free, too. He stepped forward slowly, not taking his eyes off the creature. The axoloth growled, the sound reverberating off the walls, and James felt a brief spike of fear. He had to suppress it. He couldn't let the creature sense any weakness. "Easy," he said softly, his voice low and steady. "I'm not here to hurt you." The axoloth hissed, its long tail swishing the air. James reached for the bacon-scented lotion once more, this time unsure if it would work a second time. He squeezed the lotion into his palm, the familiar scent filling the air. The axoloth paused, its nostrils flaring. "I'm not afraid of you," James said, his voice gaining confidence. "You don't need to fight." For a long moment the creature remained still, its amber eyes fixed on James's. It was a dangerous game they were playing. The creature wasn't calming, it was watching. But then, after what felt like an eternity, the axoloth's body language shifted. Its muscles relaxed slightly, and it took a step closer, hesitating. The growl died down into a low rumble, almost like a purr. James reached out, just as he had with XR-42, offering his hand slowly. He could feel the tension in the room, every eye on him, but he kept his movements calm. And to his astonishment, the axoloth stepped forward again, its head lowering, its rough, scaly skin brushing against his fingers. It was a brief moment of peace, but it was enough. For the first time in what felt like forever, James allowed himself to breathe. He hadn't been sure it would work, but in that moment something clicked. He wasn't just calming a predator. He was bridging the gap between two species, showing them that humanity's strength didn't come from violence. It came from trust, from empathy, from understanding that even the deadliest creatures could be reasoned with. "Good boy," James whispered, his voice barely audible. The creature exhaled sharply, then lowered its head even further. The room's atmosphere shifted, the air less tense, as the axoloth finally lay down at his feet, its sharp, predatory claws now harmless. Monica's voice crackled through his earpiece. "You did it. You really did it." James smiled tiredly, but there was no pride in it, just relief. This wasn't the end of the journey, not by a long shot, but it was a step forward, and for the first time he believed it was a step in the right direction. Epilogue: A New Path. The days that followed were filled with new tests and challenges, but James could feel something shifting. The galaxy, once wary of humanity's presence, was starting to see something else. Something powerful, yes, but also something that could heal, that could change things. The galaxy didn't just need predators subdued, it needed understanding. And humanity, through James, had shown that they could provide that understanding. But as the Council deliberated over their findings, James knew the hardest test was still to come, proving that the galaxy was ready for peace, even when it seemed impossible. And in the quiet moments when XR-42 would nudge him affectionately, James knew one thing for certain. They hadn't just tamed the apex predators. They were learning to tame the fear, the suspicion, and the hatred that had defined their species' past. And that was the real victory.